What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, I'm going to talk about Double Game Week 34. It has now been confirmed. We have the fixtures. I'm going to discuss what it means for chip strategy and things like that, and also take a look at what the Double Game Week schedule will look like for the rest of the season. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already, and let's get into it. All right, let's start with Double Game Week 34, which has now been officially confirmed. We got 7 teams that are going to double in total, which is a few more than we were initially expecting, but that's all down to the FA Cup results. So as soon as Coventry beat Wolves and Man United beat Liverpool, that changed the outlook of what the Double Game Week schedule would look like, essentially. So Arsenal have got Wolves away and Chelsea at home. Now, if you were hand-picking Double Game Week fixtures, they are not the 2 games you would necessarily choose. But given how good Arsenal are, you're probably going to want a double or a triple up. And I think that Double Game Week in particular is helpful no matter what chip strategy you're on. So if you're free hitting 29, you've probably already got Arsenal players ready to go. If you're wildcarding in 30 or 31, you can load up on them. And if you've got no chips, Arsenal have pretty good fixtures coming up anyway, so they're going to be worth transfers. So if we look at the Arsenal fixture schedule, Man City away in 30 is obviously tough, not ideal, but then it's Luton at home, Brighton away and Villa at home, and then you've got that double in 34. It's not yet confirmed on the FPL page at the time of recording, but they will obviously... Oh, sorry, it is actually in there. I completely missed it. So then you've got the double, right? Wolves away and Chelsea at home. FPL much quicker than I thought they would be. So Arsenal players are going to be worth looking at. I'm not going to spend a great deal of time in this video going through every single player in detail, but obviously Raya on wildcard could be good. Ben White, top scoring Arsenal defender at the moment. Saliba and Gabriel, decent. I wouldn't look at anyone else. If you want to go for a double up on attack instead, you've got Saka, who is currently flagged. There's no way he's going to miss that Man City game. And Odegaard. I still don't, as good as Declan Rice has been this year, I still don't think he's going to be worth a place in our teams, but obviously he's nice and cheap. And then potentially, sorry, not a forward, you could go for Havertz as well, 7.2 million, who's mostly playing as a number 9 for Arsenal. I just don't know if I would... I'm not sure I would be completely confident in his minutes, despite the fact he's played 75 minutes plus in each of the last 6 game weeks. But there's always that slight worry that Jesus might come in or someone like that, despite how well Havertz is playing. I think if you're going for midfielders, Saka and Odegaard are just a bit safer. But again, not going into great detail on that kind of chat right now. Bournemouth also double, Villa away and Wolves away. That's pretty nice for anyone that free hit in 29 and went for 2 or 3 Bournemouth players in game week 28, depending on which players you've got, by the way. Because if you've got Kirkes, you're probably worried about minutes. Obviously, the midfielders like Tavernier and Cliver, you don't necessarily want to have to play most weeks. But if you had to hold them until 34 and then play them again, it wouldn't be the end of the world. But certainly Solanke is a good option. Neto is probably going to be my double game week goalkeeper as well. And if you had to play someone like Zabani, it's not the end of the world. But personally, I'll be trying to use transfers so that I can bench him in 34, despite the fact he's got Villa away and Wolves away. But either way, for those of us that free hit in 29, it's quite nice that Bournemouth are going to have 2 fixtures again. Whether or not you go for more than 1 or 2 on wildcard, probably not. But that's a discussion for another video, I think. Crystal Palace. So right now, Crystal Palace are not a team most people are looking at. But in 34, they've got 2 home games. West Ham at home and Newcastle at home, which is pretty decent. Someone like Eze could be a good option. I definitely think, and obviously this is just initial thoughts, that free hit 34 is going to be quite popular because Spurs are going to blank in game week 34, which I'll come on to in a minute, but they will have 2 double game weeks after that. So being able to free hit them out looks pretty nice. And you could go for maybe 1 or 2 Palace players with 2 home games. So Eze would definitely be right at the top of the list of options, but also possibly a defender or goalkeeper as well. Whereas I think people that aren't free hitting in 34 will mostly avoid Crystal Palace because the fixtures beforehand aren't ideal. So they've got Forest and Bournemouth in 30 and 31, which isn't bad, but they're both away. And then it's City at home in 32, Liverpool away in 33. So if you're someone that's not free hitting in 34, you're going to want to leave it as late as possible to bring those Crystal Palace players in. I might still go for someone like Eze, because doing Foden or Son to Eze gives you a lot of money to then spend elsewhere, possibly for a Liverpool defender. But it's not a player that I'd be looking to bring in right now, that's for sure. Who else is doubling here? So Everton, Forest at home and Liverpool at home. So like Crystal Palace, they've got 2 home games. Obviously, for their attackers, you're probably not looking at any. I don't think any of their midfielders or forwards really fit into our squads at the moment. There's so many good options to pick from. You don't want Everton attackers. I think if you were going to look to bench boost in game week 34, then you could go for like a Pickford or a Branthwaite and just hope they get something from Liverpool and a clean sheet against Forest. But I don't think many people are going to bench boost in game week 34. Again, it's going to be very team dependent. You might be in a much better position to do that. But I think for anyone that wildcards soon, because of that Spurs blank and the fact that they will double later on, free hit is going to look much better. It really depends what chips you got left. It's not that bench boost is bad this week. And in fact, in some situations, I think it could be quite good because if you wait until game week 37, which a lot of us are going to do, there's possibly going to be a lot of rotation. And the chances of getting 15 players that play twice is going to be quite low, I think. So I wouldn't rule out bench boost 34, and therefore Everton players could be decent. But I think for a lot of people that got all chips left, they're probably going to free hit in 34 instead. Liverpool, Fulham away, and Everton away. Pretty good double game week. Yeah, not really good. Pretty good double game week. I'll leave it at that. But the good thing about Liverpool is the fixtures beforehand are decent. So if you've already got Arsenal players, Bournemouth players, whoever it might be, Liverpool are definitely the next. Liverpool are definitely where most people are going to be looking at using transfers, no matter which double game week players they've already got, because it's Brighton at home this week, Sheffield United at home in 31, Man United away in 32, and I don't think many people are going to be worried about playing Liverpool players in that game. Palace at home in 33, and then the double game week. So out of all the double game week 34 teams that were announced, Liverpool are probably the priority from game week 30. And then once you've got a double or triple, whatever you're comfortable with, you definitely want to look at Arsenal from game week 31. I think for me, Salah's the obvious one to bring in. Darwin Nunez, a lot of people are going to look at. Luis Diaz, you could use as an option as well. For defenders, Van Dijk's the one that's always going to play. We know that. And obviously, depending on how late you leave your Liverpool defender transfer, you could look at Trent Alexander-Arnold. He's probably not going to be back for game week 30, possibly not for 31 either. But if he's back fit after that, maybe he'll be worth looking at. I've got a feeling that when I end up bringing in a Liverpool defender, unless Trent gets ruled out for a while, in which case I might just keep Bradley, I think it'll probably be Van Dijk. Just take the minutes. Because even if Trent is back by 32, 33, are we going to be able to guarantee his minutes, right? They're not going to want to lose him again. So they might manage him. And Connor Bradley's obviously a pretty good replacement too. So I think Van Dijk will be the one to go for. And then possibly Kelleher as well, depending on how long Alisson is out for. We haven't really got a return date for him yet. So we're going to have to wait for updates from Klopp. If you've already got Kelleher, great. But for anyone that doesn't, I'm not sure I'd be bringing him in right now. Just to finish the rest of the teams off, Sheffield United, Burnley at home, Man United away. I think we can all just completely ignore Sheffield United. And Wolves have got Arsenal at home and Bournemouth at home, which I actually think is quite a good double game. I mean, playing Arsenal is not ideal, but it's a home game. And then having Bournemouth as well. The good thing about Wolves is they've got a lot of cheap enablers. So if you look at the options in their team that we would want in our squads, Aït Nouri, 4.5 million, very attacking defender. You've got Sarabia, only 4.7 million. I don't think Neto is going to be back by game week 34. Hwang maybe. But Sarabia is getting good minutes at the moment. And 4.7 million is so cheap. That's going to enable you all those other moves that you want to do. And before the double, they've got Villa away, Burnley away, West Ham at home, and Forest away, which is pretty decent. And then Cunha is only yellow flagged at the moment, so he could be back soon. So then you've possibly got a cheap forward as well at 5.5 million, and obviously got the same fixtures. So I think it's quite a good double game week. I think in general, I say this a lot of people will undervalue the non-Arsenal, non-Liverpool players. But if I was free hitting, I'd have triple Arsenal, triple Liverpool. Solanke would definitely be in there as well. Eze. All of a sudden, you've already got like 8, 9 players. You throw in a couple of Wolves players or maybe Everton and stuff like that, and you can just go all in on the doubles. For those people that haven't got their free hit, they're going to have to deal with Spurs not having a fixture. And I think that looks pretty good. So I think if I was someone that hadn't free hit in 29, I'd be feeling pretty good now. But I don't think it's a disaster for everyone else, because if you've got no chips, you can just look to sell Spurs players over the next couple of weeks and then bring them back in later. And if you're someone like me that's only got the wild card left, well, I'd be looking at it like this. So let's just go to Son here. He's got Luton at home this week. You're not selling him. You don't really need to sell Spurs players until 34 itself, because they got Luton at home, West Ham away, Forest at home, and Newcastle away. So at some point after Luton at home, you can look to sell them. And Son to Eze might be a move that I look to make. You then don't have them for 34. You dead end your team. You don't need Spurs players for 35 unless they double anyway. And then later on, you just bring them back in on your wild card. So I think if you've got wild card only, dead end 34 still looks pretty good. And then Spurs have got Chelsea away and Man City at home to rearrange, which aren't great fixtures, but they also have Burnley at home in 37 and Sheffield United away in 38. So we are still going to want Spurs players. So I think overall, anyone with all their chips left that didn't get that really low score in 29, you're in a really good position. Anyone that's already used their free hit and got a wild card left, I still think this is going to be pretty easy to manage. It all really now depends on how good that bench boost in 37 is going to look like. So let's take a look at what the other double game week fixtures could be. So it is worth saying at this point that any other double game weeks after game week 34 haven't yet been officially confirmed, but we know which teams are going to double because they haven't been put into game week 34, and most of the other fixtures that need to be rescheduled will go into game week 37, apart from probably one. Now, I'm going to leave links in the description to Tala, Ben, and James, the fixture gurus that are always trying to predict this stuff. Essentially, most of the games should go into 37, but it's likely that Chelsea and Spurs will double in either 35 or 36. That's not guaranteed, because I saw James from Planet FPL tweeting this morning that potentially Spurs could have a triple game week in game week 37, but I'm not sure how likely that will be. So it's more likely, I think, that Chelsea and Spurs will double in 35 or 36. Tala thinks it's more likely in 36, but again, nothing's been confirmed. If this happens, Spurs will have a blank in 34 and then 2 double game weeks afterwards. So if it happens in game week 35, the fixtures will be Chelsea against Villa away and Spurs at home. And for Spurs, it will be Arsenal at home and Chelsea away, which doesn't look great on paper. But remember, they've got another double game week to come and those Burnley and Sheffield United fixtures before the end of the season. If the double happens in 36, for Chelsea, it'll be West Ham at home and Spurs at home. And for Spurs, it'll be Liverpool away and Chelsea away, which again doesn't look great. But they've got the fixtures afterwards, which are pretty decent. I would say at this point, you don't need to massively worry about which game week it goes in. You just need to know that Chelsea and Spurs are going to have 2 double game weeks after game week 34, and also know that Spurs blank in 34. So even if you don't want them at that point, you are probably going to want them later on. Let's take a look at game week 37. So this is what double game week 37 could look like, and this is based on the confirmed fixtures for game week 34, plus that potential double for Spurs and Chelsea in 35 or 36. So you would have 6 teams in total doubling in game week 37. So Brighton would have Newcastle away and Chelsea at home. Not a great double game week, but obviously Brighton are now out of Europe. So the likes of Gross and Dunk, who play pretty much every single game they're fit for, could be good options. And obviously we've seen how good Gross has been over the last kind of 5 to 10 game weeks. Anytime he gets an attack and return, he seems to get bonus. So I wouldn't completely rule Brighton out in terms of bringing them into our teams. If we just have a quick look at the fixtures around that potential double in 37, let me just bring up Gross here. So 35 is Bournemouth away, 36 is Villa at home. Then you'd have that potential double in 37, and then Man United at home in 38. So it's not awful. And Brighton do have a couple of cheap options as well. And if you're looking to bench boost in 37, again, I know the fixtures aren't necessarily ideal, but the likes of Van Hecker at 4.1 million, Adingra at 5 million, they could potentially be options. Chelsea would have Forest away and Brighton away. Of course, you'd rather have 2 home fixtures, but it's not the worst double game week. Plus, Chelsea have got that other game against Spurs to reschedule, and they've got really good fixtures beforehand as well. So Cole Palmer's going to be pretty much a must, I would say, for most people. You could look at Petrovic, Gusto as well, and just hope that Reece James doesn't come back anytime soon. But their fixture schedule looks quite nice, especially if you're going to free hit in 34, because you've got Burnley at home this week, Man United at home in 31, then it's Sheffield United away in 32, and Everton at home in 33. You free hit your Chelsea players out in 34 where they've got Arsenal away. And then after that, you got Villa, West Ham, Forest, Bournemouth, plus 2 extra fixtures. So 2 double game weeks. So Chelsea are going to be worth looking at for everyone. Man City would have Fulham away and Spurs away. Again, you'd rather have a home fixture thrown in there, but you're never going to ignore a Man City double. What you really need, especially if you're not free hitting in 37, is for the title race still to be open, because we know from last season, if that title is over and City are still in Europe, which they'll be favourites to be, there is going to be rotation. So for those of us not free hitting in 37, looking to wildcard to set up the bench boost, we really want Man City still in a title race purely for FPL purposes. Man United have got Arsenal at home and Newcastle at home. Not the most ideal double game week, especially when you have to play Arsenal, but Newcastle conceding a lot at the moment. Garnacho is a great enabler for a bench boost. Fernandes always plays on penalties as well, and Nana could be an option too. And the thing about Man United, I know no one wants their players most of the time, but the fixtures just before that double would be decent. So they'd have Sheffield United at home in 34. So for anyone not using a chip that week or doesn't have any chips, getting Man United players in from 34 looks quite nice, because it's Sheffield United at home, followed by Burnley at home, then Palace away, then the double game week, and then they finish off the season with Brighton away. So Man United players are going to be on our minds, despite the fact they've been awful for most of this season. Newcastle, Brighton at home, and Man United away. Again, it could. I think in general, I've said this a lot now, the doubles in 37 are not great in general. Most teams have at least one tough fixture, if not two. There's no, apart from Spurs, which we'll talk about in a minute, no one's got two home games. There could be rotation. I'll say right now, I've got worries about how the bench boost will end up looking. I mean, if Man United and Newcastle are still competing for European places and stuff like that, you shouldn't expect too much rotation. And obviously, they're not in Europe or anything like that, so there shouldn't be too much of a concern. But I do worry about how good the bench boost might be, because the fixtures are not ideal. But I'm also not that worried about it, because I feel like most people are in the same position unless they're going to bench boost in 34. I don't think there's a better week to use it, right? So we kind of just got to take what we have. But with Newcastle, it's a similar situation to Man United in the fixtures beforehand are pretty good. So in 34, it's Palace away. 35 is Sheffield United at home. 36 is Burnley away. Then you've got the double game week, and then it's Brentford away to end the season. So despite the double game weeks for Man United and Newcastle not looking great, and I'm not saying you have to triple up on those teams, the fixtures beforehand are good. And people will probably ignore them, or some people will. And so for me, that just seems like a nice little differential. I'm sure by the time we get there, especially if they're, players like Gordon and Isak, Fernandes and Garnacho are smashing it, more people want to go for them. But I still think there'll be somewhat of a differential. And then finishing off, you've got Spurs, Burnley at home, Man City at home. Do you know what? I don't mind that double game week, because Man City always seem to struggle against Spurs, and it's almost the perfect game for someone like Son. Plus, you've got that Burnley fixture as part of the double. And as I already mentioned, they've got Sheffield United away to finish the season. So that looks pretty good. Beforehand, the fixtures are much tougher. So Arsenal at home in 35, Liverpool away in 36. But don't forget, they also have that Chelsea away game to rearrange. So if that goes into 35 or 36, which is likely, after game week 34, you've got two double game weeks, a single game week of Sheffield United, and a single game week of either Arsenal or Liverpool, depending on, which game week of 35 or 36 the double doesn't go into. I'm probably making this a bit confusing now, but that is what the double game week schedule will hopefully look like. 34 is confirmed. Because of that, we know which fixtures are most likely to go into 37, and it's probably only going to be one other double game week that goes into 35 or 36. My initial thoughts are, without looking into wildcard teams and stuff like that, if you've got all your chips, wildcarding in 30 if you're not happy with your team, or 31 is going to be the way to do it. You free hit in 34. That doesn't mean that you ignore teams on your wildcard that are doubling in 34. You're still going to want some Arsenal players. You're still going to want some Liverpool ones. But you would start putting in Man United and Newcastle players now, and Spurs players, because the fixtures are good from 30 onwards. Then you free hit them all out in 34. And then you've got them ready to go for the good fixtures and the double game weeks afterwards. So I think for all chips, I'd be wildcarding this week or next, free hitting in 34, bench boost 37, and just hope that things go smoothly for that. If you've got your wildcard left, like me, you're dead ending into 34, and then wildcarding in 35 or 36. I think it'll probably be 35 just to start getting the Man United and Newcastle players in for the good fixtures. And that also gives you an extra transfer as you get closer to the bench boost. So if you wildcard in 35, you roll in 36, and then you've got 2 fixtures for game week 37. Just in case something goes wrong with the bench boost, you want an extra transfer to kind of fix that. So it'll probably still be that. But potentially, if your team looks all right in 35, and the double for Chelsea and Spurs goes into 36, maybe you just wildcard in game week 36 instead, which would be closer to game week 37 anyway. For no chips, again, it all comes down to that balance. I think you'd want less Spurs players now because they're going to blank in 34, but you're going to want to use transfers afterwards. And from 34 onwards, start getting in Man United, Newcastle, and Spurs players anyway, because in general, the fixtures are pretty good. Obviously, these Double Game Week 34 has only just been announced, so this is an initial reaction. I'll have a bit more of a think to see if I've got those initial thoughts wrong. Maybe it'll be that wildcard now and bench boost 34 looks good, but I'm not convinced about that because of the Spurs blank. I think that's going to mess things up. So let me know what you think in the comments below. I will try and get a wildcard video out for tomorrow because I know people have been asking me for that. But for now, that's my initial thoughts. Give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button. Rate 5 stars if you listen on podcast. And I'll catch you again, hopefully, tomorrow.